Hello, and welcome to the next part of our GameMaker series for beginners. Unfortunately, it's been a while since I have been able to upload videos for various reasons, but we should be catching up very soon and have the complete 10-week series done. Today, we're going to focus on gravity and jumping. So something fairly simple and not a lot of code, so it shouldn't take long. Now, as you can see, I'm running the final version of what we're going to get at the end of this video. What you're going to be able to do is jump with your character. You should be able to move left and right so far. And by pressing space, I can jump, only single jump. And as you can see, there's a gravity effect. So he starts off going certain speed, slows down, gets to 0, and comes back again. So without further ado, let's get into it. Right, so first off, we've got a bit of theory to get through. So I'm going to explain exactly what we're going to do over a few slides here, and then we're going to start coding it. So essentially, we need to add gravity to our character, Dino. Now, this basically means, because essentially a 2D game is just a big XY graph, the kind you do in maths when you're at school pretty much all the time. You draw graphs, right? X axis, Y axis, and you draw lines and stuff. A 2D game is basically a graph with a bunch of objects on it being moved every frame of animation, and that is a definition of a 2D game. So let's think about what that means. Gravity. For gravity, that means that Dino is just going to move down, which means the Y coordinate is going to get, what, bigger or smaller? So bigger, because 0, 0, unlike your XY graph, starts at the top left. When you do an XY graph in school, a 2D graph, it's basically in the bottom left corner, right? Or in the middle if you're going to go negative and you have like a cross. And that is relevant as well, because we do go negative as well. But I'm just showing you like this for simplicity, okay? So the screen is 2048 pixels long and 720 pixels high. This is the bottom. So when he goes up, Y will get smaller. When he goes down, Y will get bigger. So our code is really going to be affecting the Y speed variable, which we may have to add. I'm not 100% sure whether we've got that or not, but we'll make sure we've got it. Because we've just been doing the X, we probably haven't added that yet. So that's all that happens there. Now, in terms of landing on the ground, at the moment, the ground is just a background. So there's nothing to land on. I mean, the whole background is just one image. It's not an object. So really, we have to put in something to simulate the ground. And the way we're going to do that is we are going to create a simple wall object, which will be a 32 by 32 square, and we will simply add as many wall objects as we need across the entire image, and then we will write some code which detects a collision between the player object, Dino, and the wall object. And when there is a collision, we will stop his vertical speed. Okay. Now the way we're going to do that is using the place meeting function, which takes three parameters. It takes an x, y coordinate of the thing that you want to check whether it's colliding with something, and the object with which it's colliding. So in this case, it would be object wall. Okay. When he hits the ground, when we've detected he hits the ground, we will simply set y speed to 0. So the y coordinate is not going to be going down anymore at that point, the y position. So moving on then. This just gives you a little bit more of a detailed picture of how place meeting works. XD, YD is simply Dino's coordinate, but the y is y plus y speed. So this is the interesting bit here. We are going to call this function place meeting, checking whether his y plus 5, which will be the y speed, actually is hitting the wall. And remember, we're not really going from the coordinate itself. We're going from the hitbox, which I probably should have drawn in here. So if the hitbox bottom, which will be his feet, plus y speed actually overlaps the beginning of the wall, then that's a collision. So if you think about it, we're looking at the future, which kind of reminds me of calculus in maths and integration, which is kind of looking at the future position, which is very exciting and all that kind of science fiction-y in a way, but actually it's really kind of pretty boring. It's just math. So we're looking at whether he's gonna hit that. Now, if he is gonna hit, we then know we need to slow him down. And the way we slow him down is with this thing called a while loop. Now, this is all, we're going to put this all in the code in a bit. When we've already kind of done it with the horizontal movement already, I think. So it's kind of more the same. But the while loop, just to give you a brief explanation of that, it's kind of like an if. If you think about it like an if statement, it's easy. And the way you read it is like this. And just one little tip, all you coders out there, budding coders, always be able to explain code in terms of very simple English or whatever language you speak in your team, because you'll constantly be explaining, as a developer or as a designer or anything, you'll constantly be explaining and justifying the code you've written. If you can't explain it easily, then that kind of opens you up to misunderstandings, hence bugs, hence more time, more money, and you don't want to go there. So how does this work? So this is saying while the condition inside the brackets is true, do the code or run the code or execute the code inside the while loop. And inside the while loop means inside the squiggly braces, all right? So let's look at that in detail in terms of what this code is actually doing. So while the variable player health is less than 10, while the value of the variable player health is less than 10, add 1 to player health. So let's run through an example. So let's say player health is 8. Okay. What do we get now? While the value of player health, which is 8, is less than 10, well, 8 is less than 10, so the condition inside the brackets is true. Therefore, because it's true, we'll go inside and run this code. Player health equals player health plus 1. So 8 plus 1 is 9. What happens then? We go back, see the arrow, to the while, because it's still true. So we keep on doing this while until this condition is false. So some of you might have already picked up on the fact that this could run forever. If it runs forever, that's not a good thing. All right, generally, because if it runs forever, have you ever got that situation where your PC fan goes mental? Absolutely, totally mental. You possibly got a while loop that's gone on forever, and there's a bug in some software that's running on your machine, or some condition it's got into whereby it's got into this while loop. It's running around forever and not breaking, so you have to kind of break out of it. Sometimes that can be hard. That's basically what's happening there. So it goes back, and it says while player health is less than 10. Well, player health is 9 now, so is 9 less than 10? Yes, it is. So this condition is true. Therefore, we go into the while loop again. Player health equals player health plus 1. 9 plus 1 is 10. We go back again, and we test the condition again. Is player health less than 10? Well, player health is 10. Is 10 less than 10? No. So that's false. So we don't go into this bit now. And what do we do then? Well, if we don't go into this bit, we just drop out of the while loop and go to the next line of code. I haven't got a next line of code here, but there's going to be a next line of code. There might not be a next line of code, but the point is it drops out and continues running if there's code to be run. So that's the theory, and next we're going to focus on the code. The next step then is to create our wall object, which will actually, in this particular video, will be the floor object, but it is going to double up as the wall object for platforms as well. So we're just going to call it wall. So in order to do that, we need to create a sprite and an object. You guys should know how to do that by now, so I'm just going to quickly do that here. Call it SPL wall. Create a 32 by 32 square and color it how you like, but make it transparent. Opacity. So what you want to do here is right click on the default, or on the default layer, and edit layer properties, opacity, I don't know, make it 30 or something. Alright, maybe a bit more. 40. Done. Okay, so just create an object. Again, please name it the same so we all know what we're doing. As in obj wall. Assign the sprite to it. Let's get rid of that. Assign the sprite. Oops. Oh, did I just create a sprite? Okay, don't do that. Delete that. Sorry about that. Let's create an object for obj wall. At least if you make that mistake as well, which is quite common, I think you know how to back it out now, which is super easy. Okay, so we've got a wall. There is one thing we do want to do. We want to make it top left in terms of the origin. And the reason we want to do that is so that it will fit nicely when we put it in the room. So I'm going to put it in the room now and show you a technique that will save you absolute ton of time. Make sure you've got the instances layer checked, because all objects, as you know, have to be on the instances layer. Click on the object wall, the wall object in objects, and drag it on, but hold your Alt button down. Hey, that's way too big. Alright, click on it, delete it. If yours is too big, I'm just going to go and adjust the size. Here you go. Edit the sprite, click on size, resize on the left hand panel here, apply, done. Alright, let's go back into the room, drag it on. So, I just dragged on one. Now if I click my Alt button, which for Mac users, the button next to your command button on the left is what you would normally call an option button. It doubles up as Alt, even if it's not marked up. So press that down and hold it down and you'll actually see the square, the object appear under your mouse cursor, right? So now if you hold down the left button of your mouse and drag, you can create lots of these instances, which you'll see piling up on the left hand side in the instances layer of the room editor. Fill in the missing ones. Alright, there you go. You can pop up this window as well for each one. If you double click, and that tells you the name of it, which you can always rename if you want special ones. Like for instance, and I've only just thought of this, folks. For instance, if you want to have like special ones that your player will disappear down a hole. I don't know why you'd want to do that. Well, you can just rename them and you can use the name in your code so you know. You can always check if he's over this particular one, then he falls. Anyway, that's something we can do later. So we've got a wall, or we've got a floor rather. In the next part, we will actually write the code and we'll be able to demonstrate this. Currently, if I run it now, what happens? I get an error. Y speed's not set. So you might not be able to see this. So Y speed is not set in step. I might actually just go and try and fix that because I want to show you this. So in step, Y speed is not set, which clearly it's not because I haven't added it yet. I should have removed this, so I will remove it. Let's try again. Alright, he's still up in the air, but he's gonna fall. Alright, he's gonna fall. And when I code it, I'll code it so we do the gravity before we do the collision so that he will just fall and you'll be able to see it. So in the next part, we will write the code. Okay, here we are. Right, we have the dinosaur object open, as in the player, and we have the create event open. Now, we need to add a few variables. So he's going to have Y speed, which will effectively determine, will help to determine where on the Y axis he will be moved every frame. Please make sure you've got into your head that we are repositioning this player and every object in the game. We are repositioning them every frame, because at the end of the day, this is an animation. This is just a big animation that is interactive, and you as a player get to control or affect by giving input into the game by pressing keys and manipulating your mouse. But we don't have any mouse control in this game yet. So Y speed initially is going to be 0. So it's always good to put a comment. I'm just going to copy that one. Here's another tip. Always copy and paste when you can. It's not a case of being lazy, although sometimes it is, but it's a case of if you always type stuff out and you've got repetitive code, then you're going to make mistakes and you're going to have more bugs in your code. But if you've got some working code already and you just copy and paste it, well, the code you just copied and pasted is correct by definition. All right, so we've got a Y speed and we need gravity and we need, what else do we need? We need a jump speed. So here's the thing you're gonna want to know. Now, I'm not going to use the built-in variable gravity. So why do we always say that? Why do we always say, oh, well, I'm not going to use the built-in this, I'm not going to use the built-in that? It's because that if you use your own version, you've got more control over it. Okay? Generally, all the built-in stuff is easy. It's good if you want to do stuff that's good and easy, quick. You're not going to customize it too much. But don't use it if you want to control it more. And another reason for not using it is that sometimes these things become deprecated and GameMaker will no longer use them anymore. So we are going to do GRV. That's our variable. Remember, these are instance variables. Instance means that they are tied to the instance of the object and nothing else, so they can be seen from the object, and the object can expose them to other objects as well by the dot notation. So you'll be able to say your object is called, I'm just going to show you, say the object is called player, and player is in some other object, exists as some code in some other object. You'd be able to go player.grv like that. Anyway, I don't want to confuse the issue. So let's just say gravity equals 0.3, which basically means he's going to drop 0.3 pixels for every frame. We don't want it to be too much because he'll drop super fast out. Yeah, it'd be ridiculous. Gravity value, and the final variable we want is the jump speed. So this is something that is kind of an absolute value that every time you jump he's going to go 10 pixels in the air, and it's minus 10 because he's jumping up, and as we know, going up is in a negative direction because 0, 0, the origin is top left. Okay, so the further down you go, the higher the number gets. The further up you go, the lower the number gets. So minus 10 is going to go up by 10 pixels every time we jump. And having it as a variable is very useful because you'll want to actually test it, and you might go, oh, I want it to jump higher, I want it to jump lower. So you can just change the value here, and you won't have to. There's no point using minus 10 in the step code, because if you use the value minus 10 and don't create a jump speed variable, then if you want to change it to minus 8, you'll need to change it in various places. And also you'll come back to it and you go, oh, what's that minus 10 number? I don't know. But if you create a variable called jump speed, whenever you see the word jump speed in whatever code you're looking at, you'll know it refers to jump speed as opposed to minus 10, which has no meaning whatsoever. Okay. Right, so we've done the variables. I feel like I'm talking too much. So let's go into the step where I have actually added some comments, and I'm hoping that your code looks like this. If it doesn't, it's going to look very similar. First thing we're going to do is add the effect of gravity. okay? Which basically means we're just going to add gravity onto his y speed, very simply like this. I might show you also, if I haven't shown you this before, so that means y speed equals y speed plus gravity. So the long form would be this. But very few programmers would do it this way. That's the obvious way. You can show it. So y speed, the new value of y speed is going to be the old value of y speed plus gravity. So if y speed is 0, then y speed is now going to equal, in this frame, 0 plus 0.3, 0.3. In the next frame, y speed, which is 0.3, is going to equal 0.3 plus 0.3, 0.6. So first frame is going to be 0.3, second frame is going to be 0.6, third frame is going to be 0.9. So you can see that the y speed increases, and which is a true reflection of acceleration. So if you jumped off your roof, don't do this, by the way. Your speed would increase, right? So our speed is increasing by 0.3 each time. So it's kind of like a real sort of effect. Anyway, we would do generally plus equals like this, okay? Now for the jump code, we've already got, you probably don't have this actually. So we need a jump. I'm going to pretend I haven't done it. So we need a jump variable to test if the user has pressed the jump key, all right, on the keyboard. Now to detect whether you pressed the jump key 60 times a second, so your user's not going to be that fast. So the code is always going to detect it when you press this. We're going to be keyboard check pressed, okay, because we only want to check for one press. Keyboard check keeps on detecting it if you hold the key down, but we only want to detect it once. Keyboard check pressed detects it just the one time if you pressed it down. So it's going to be VK space, so we want to assign the jump key to the space key. I'm going to put a semicolon on the end, but remember you don't have to. Apologise if I'm going through like every single thing, but it's always good to remind yourself of these things again and again. Repetition is by far the best way of becoming proficient at something. You know, you've got to spend hours and hours and hours and hours, like thousands of hours, to become an expert. And really, the experts are the one with the dedication to actually put in those hours. They're not, you know, just naturally brilliant people necessarily. I'm certainly not anyway. So I've put in a few hours, so that's why I've got to where I am here, which is not where I want to get to, but you know, you got to keep learning and keep learning and keep learning and don't stop learning. So our jump code, we want to test if he's jumped. So we're going to say if jump. Now, if you have pressed the space, jump is going to be 1. Okay, if you haven't pressed space, jump is going to be 0. So if jump is 1, then this is effectively going to be true, because 1 is a truthy value, 0 is a falsy value. Okay, so we want to say if jump, very simple. I guess I could say if jump equals 1, maybe that makes things a bit more obvious. Then we want to add the jump speed to y speed, right? Jump speed variable, see? Jump speed variable. I can see it because I'm in the context of the player. And that should be that, really. Now, I'm going to add the... Should I do that or should I not? Should we run it right now? In fact, I might just comment this out. And to comment out a block, you just go Command K or Control K, like that. Easy. And to undo it, you go Command Shift K or Control Shift K. So very, very useful tip. So I'm just going to actually show you the effect of the gravity. But in order to do that, I need to add Y speed to the Y coordinate. So we do that at the end where it says finally set the coordinates. Because if you don't set the Y, you're not going to move the player, right? The X and Y determines where the player is. And we want to move Y to whatever Y speed is. In fact, add or minus, add or subtract, whatever Y speed is in this frame. Okay. So this is going to add gravity on. And that's it, because that's all we've done. We've commented out jump code. So let's run it. And there, oh sorry, you didn't see that because it was on my other screen. I'll try and move it up. Let's try and do it again. Alright, it keeps sort of going onto my other screen, sorry. But basically what happened is he just fell through. He fell through under gravity. So moving on, let's add the jump code back in. And next we're going to put in some vertical movement in here, which is basically going to be the collision, which we talked about earlier in the theoretical aspect. So we're going to use the place meeting function, and then we're going to use the while function to get a pixel perfect collision. But we'll leave the while out for the moment. We'll just use the place meeting and we'll see what happens. So here you go. If place meeting xy is going to be the x position of Dino and the y plus y speed, because remember we want to look into the future. Well, I'm putting spaces in here, but you don't need to. I'm putting in spaces because it's more readable. But when the compiler parses this code, looks at this code, it doesn't care whether there's a space there. Why should it care? It's intelligent in that sense. Okay, y plus y speed. So we're looking at whether the current position plus the y speed, which is 5. Let me just check. Oh, sorry. It's not 5 at all. It's whatever y speed is currently in terms of adding the gravity or the jump speed or whatever. And I just noticed I got... Yeah, no, that's right. Jump speed, yeah. So is it touching the floor if I add y speed onto y? And I need to say the object which I want to check I'm colliding with. So if Dino is colliding with the wall, that's basically what that says. Let's put that in as a comment. If Dino is colliding with wall, then go into the block and set y speed to 0. That's what we're going to do first. All right. And that's it. So hopefully that will stop Dino, but I've got an error here. I think I'm missing a bracket. There you go. So let's run. And we're going to have that issue again. Right, there you go. He stopped there. Look, I can jump. I press space and it adds 10. It minuses 10 from Y speed, so it jumps 10 in the air, and it keeps doing that. But because it's adding gravity as well, it's adding 10 minus 0.3. It's minusing 0.3 every frame until it gets to 0. Then it starts coming down again. But can you see that it's kind of a bit weird when it gets to the bottom there? We're not 100% certain it's going to stop at the right place. So we've got to put that while code in and see what happens then. So what we're going to do is do this. So while not place meeting, I'll talk about that in a sec. Basically the same thing, x plus y speed. Or rather x plus, we want to move it just 1 pixel, so we use the sine function. And we move it move it 1 pixel in whatever direction y is going. So what does this do? So sine will give us 1 or minus 1. So depending on whether y speed is positive or negative, if y speed is positive 10, say, positive 8, this sine y speed will be 1. So that'll be y plus 1. If y speed is negative, say minus 5, then sine minus 5 gives minus 1. So it'll be y plus minus 1 or y minus 1. So really what we're doing is we're saying while dino plus 1 or minus 1 pixel in the y direction is not hitting a wall, that's the exclamation sign, that's a not, that knots this whole thing. While dino is not hitting a wall when you add 1 or minus 1 to him, then move him in the direction of y speed, move him down 1. So this should get us to the pixel perfect position of being just above the wall. So it's just going to add 1 pixel each time until he hits the wall or hits the floor. And then we'll come out of the while loop as discussed before, because this will be false. This will be false, and set y speed to 0. So let's try that again. I think I'm missing another bracket here. And this warning, place meeting K. What? Oh, sorry. Place meeting. Yeah, there we go. So let's try it now. Alright, let's get him into view. that's smoother. I mean, don't know if you noticed before, it was struggling when it got to the end, deciding where to stop him, but that's a lot smoother. Now, just to show you how to tweak things, once you've got variables set up, of course, you can alter the gravity and you can alter the jump speed. So let's alter the gravity to less gravity. So you'd sort of expect him to be more bouncy, right? More jumpy with less gravity. Just think about what happens on the moon. Let's check it out. Alright, jump. Whoa. Love it. I mean, that's totally ridiculous for the game. Let's change it to 0.5. So it's good to experiment. So once you've done this, just experiment. And for the gameplay, you want to get whatever feels best. And we may not be able to get that right now because we don't have objects to jump over and stuff like that. And we're not moving and jumping and testing all that. Although we could. Like that. There you go. So just test it out. That feels a lot better. Now, let's change the jump speed to 5, -5. Let's see what happens there. By the way, we're pretty much finished. Just testing. That's a tiny little jump. That's kind of daft. Let's change it to -20, which is double the original value. -10, and see what happens. So it's kind of like the first thing, but it's same gravity, so it's falling faster but jumping higher. So you've got a few things you could tweak there. I'm going to set it back to -10 and just check it out again. Yeah, I like that. I'm keeping that. Okay, so we have looked at the theory of how to get gravity in, how to jumps. We added an object in to act as the floor in this case, and we called it wall because it will be acting as platform walls as well. And then we added code to add the effect of gravity, to check for the jump, to jump if the user has actually pressed the jump key, and to check for a collision between the wall object and the player. Precision perfect if he's 5 pixels away, then we move him by 1 pixel each frame until he's just above the floor. Then we set Y speed to 0. Finally, we've worked out the coordinate, what it should be, so we worked out the change in coordinates, so we add on whatever Y speed is to the current position, and that sets the new position for this frame. Okay? And I can't remember whether this was here before, but if you're wondering, clamp is a super easy way of stopping your player from going off screen. So this clamps in the X direction to position 16 in 2032, so you can't go beyond that. And that's it. So we have a jumping player. So I hope you enjoyed this part. I hope it made sense. Leave us a comment. Don't know if you noticed the different background. In GameMaker you can set your own background, so I've changed it to something familiar to me. And so you know who we are. And there are lots of things you can do in GameMaker which we'll cover over time. Lots of little tweaks, lots of little settings. If you want to play around with those, go into preferences and sort of run through all of these, even just general settings, you can do some really useful things. And until then, we'll see you in the next episode.